Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's
thank
a
you,
privilege
Bhaskar.
for me to interview someone whom I know at least for the last 2 decades, but never on this forum. Mr. Goswami had mentioned during his inaugural speech that we must be the hub of production, digitization, technology, risk takers, and innovators. Imagine Mr. Harsh Mariwala have done this 3 decades back. He was also a rebel, and most importantly, he is an Indian entrepreneur. He's the founder, chairman of Marico, a India Fortune 500 company. I think you are going to touch 9,000 crore turnover, sir?
Almost 10,000.
10,000, so I was wrong. Now, he has transformed a traditional commodity-driven business into a leading consumer product and services company. He leads Marico as the chairman, and he's also the chairman and MD of Kaya Limited, and as Rini mentioned that he has recently written a book named Harsh Realities. In fact, when I was reading it, I was thinking which meaning I should take. Is it Harsh Mariwala? Harsh in Hindi means happy person. Harsh is also very tough, rude realities that you face, because he has actually faced when he founded Marico in 1987 and made it into a big company. They're operating in 25 countries, managing multiple cultural codes. So you can imagine that you are a promoter family, you break out of the family business and then carve out your own niche. Those days, he was actually a rebel. But the interesting part is that when I was going through the book, Harsh Realities, it captured everything. I didn't know a lot of them during my personal interaction. It was personal, it's captivating. I found out that while he has talked about Marico, there's a lot of lessons that he has given, which as an MBA student I found, oh my God, they are so relevant even today, and which can be relevant for Indian entrepreneurs even today. And the content is not just about the Marico's success, how it fought other multinationals and other international companies and going to international destinations, but timeless, valuable lessons. And most importantly, it was endorsed by someone who is his co-author, Ram Sharan, the management guru now, who mentioned such insightful things about Mr. Mariwala, which I was not aware. Now, this was the known part, which was in public domain. I must tell you, there is also something which is not in public domain. I don't think very many people know it. Mr. Mariwala's passion for innovation enthused him to establish Marico Innovation Foundation in 2003. We are talking about philanthropy now, which works towards nurturing innovation in India. In 2012, Mr. Mariwala started Ascent Foundation, a peer learning entrepreneurial platform, because he believes hugely in continuous learning. Sharp Ventures is his family office of the Harsh Mariwala. He also founded Mariwala Health Initiative in 2015 with the philanthropic aim of giving back to society. And finally, Mr. Mariwala was recently bestowed the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award 2020 for India, which is the world's most prestigious business award for an entrepreneur. So that's the ultimate. Sir, this session is going to talk about getting in the game, as Arnold talked about it. So I'll first ask you a question. I think your answers are there already in your books, but perhaps you would like to add more lights to it. Is this the time for Indian entrepreneurs to get into the game? As Mr. Goswami was talking about, as the previous panel people are talking about, startup is the new hero.
So Bhaskar, I'm a bit of a contrarian when it comes to entrepreneurship. I've always thought that as long as the economy is on even keel, I mean, we didn't have a pandemic or overall growth rate, whether it's 3%, 5%, 7%, there are always opportunities for entrepreneurs to get in. I think we underestimate the power of entrepreneurs and we go on blaming more and more government and what we expect from the government. I think there are enough opportunities, latent opportunities which the entrepreneurs can tap irrespective of the environment, even in a lower GDP growth rate scenario, there are enough opportunities for entrepreneurs to get in. Having said that, today, of course, the economy is looking up. We've seen multiple unicorns coming in, and unicorns coming in from individuals who don't have a family background in business. So that's a big, big shift. More importantly, they don't even have money, so they're backed by other funders, whether it's family offices, PE funds, startup funds, whatever. We have a whole ecosystem of funding today. So to answer your question, net, yes, it's a fantastic time. It is very important for entrepreneurs to enter business and not have that fear of failure. I've seen that in the Indian society, there is a huge fear of failure. What happens if I fail? Of course, you'll have to fail. Everybody is not going to succeed. But out of those failures, there'll be learnings. It's like a child, A child doesn't start walking from the day the child is born. Multiple times the child falls, and then only the child starts walking, So it's okay to fail, but learn from those failures. And I personally think that we need many, many more entrepreneurs. Ultimately, it is the entrepreneurs, who are going to drive the economic growth of the country. You can expect the government to create the right infrastructure, the legal systems, whatever else, the certain key sectors like defense, infrastructure, and other things. But ultimately, it is the entrepreneurs who will create demand, who will drive the economy, and who will create jobs.
Now tell me, I ask a very different question. You just imagine you're 25-year-old.
Yes.
Would you say the same thing?
Yes, in fact, when I started working 50 years back, the whole economy was highly regulated. Since then, a lot of liberalization has taken place over the years, starting from 1990. And luckily, I was able to identify a business which did not require any licensing. And you will be shocked to know in my 50 years, I have been to Delhi precisely once or twice in the government offices for my own work. And that also when liberalization took place, we wanted to export packed coconut oil, it was banned. So I went to tell them, please liberalize, and it happened. So, at that time I chose the right sector. Now things are much more liberalized, so there are enough sectors, except, as I said, some few key sectors where the government is involved. So there are enough opportunities for entrepreneurs to tap into those sectors, and now the economy, the whole ecosystem has developed, as I said, whether it's funders or the technology, the confluence of technologies which are happening, which are getting leveraged by these unicorns is something which we never did at our time.
So in a sense, what you are trying to say is that it's not that what government can do for you, what you can do for the country, what you can do for generating.
Absolutely. I think we entrepreneurs, we think we are economists. We are not economists. And I see every entrepreneur wants to give viewpoint about this should be done, that should be done. But what are you doing about yourself? Why are you not meeting your own customers? Why are you not getting into customer insights? That's where you'll get growth, rather than trying to, there are enough economists, we are not economists. So normally I don't speak on the subject of economy. But if you ask me how to manage a business, how to run a business, how to grow a business, that's my domain, and I should be doing that.
All of you will be happy to know that on his own, Mr. Mariwala have been using Twitter as a route to advise entrepreneurs. Some of the tweets I can mention, and I loved it so much. I also follow him, so you can also follow him and get free advice rather than going to a business school. Startups often focus on building a product, but the truth is, building your team is equally, if not more, important. Your team determines whether you succeed or fail. Another gem. When faced with the choice between doing what is best for an individual versus an organization, always prioritize your organization, even if the individual is you. Now that's awesome. But forget these tweets. Tell me the 3 critical advice that you will give for anyone to make it in the game.
So, good question, very good question. If you are a new entrepreneur, you must realize that it is highly competitive. Each and every sector is getting more and more competitive. And if you want to succeed in your area of business, you need to create a very strong right to win. And that right to win can only come out of some innovative approach to business, or something which is pioneering, which nobody else has done, or leveraging some technologies, or creating a business model which is different, or if you're in a service business, offering some unique services. So you need to identify what is it which appeals to the consumer, and is there a critical mass of consumers willing to take that? If you offer something me too, the chances of your success are very low. Even if you succeed, you have very low market shares. So if you really want to succeed in business, you have to create a very, very strong right to win through innovation, pioneering, leveraging technologies, and whatever is unique, which is not offered by our competitors. So I think that's number one. And then you need to test it out. It just doesn't happen. You will not get all the answers through market research. You have to test out your hypothesis with your potential customers. Make some changes again in the model if you hear from the customers. And finally, after that, I would suggest take a prototype approach, go to the customer in a small area or in a small set of customers, again, learn from them, and then launch. So I think that's the first point. But as I said in my tweet earlier, I think just having the idea is not enough. You need to have very good quality talent, I think as an entrepreneur, especially new entrepreneurs, underestimate the importance of talent, They think that they will take the talent a little later, but talent has to be invested in advance if you really want to grow. Don't have a lag effect of talent, let the growth come, and after that, you'll invest in talent. So it's very important to have the right talent, and for that, you need to create the right employee value proposition. There is a war for talent today in India, and I think one of the key issues which each company is facing, and I'm on board of 6 companies, everybody is facing in different sectors. Attrition is very high. So you have to create the right environment in the company, the right culture, and you have to create the right employee value proposition to attract and retain talent. I think that's very important. And the third thing I want to emphasize, irrespective of the size of the organization, it's very important that organizations follow very high standards of governance. Because if you are small, entrepreneurs think that if I'm small, it's okay to take a shortcut. But then you are seeing those seeds of shortcuts as you grow up. And then the whole organization will be used to taking shortcuts, which is not good. So it's very important to follow the right rule of the law. And more importantly, create the right culture of governance, which means that the organization's interests come first. Many a time there's a conflict between the organization and the promoter, the organization and the employee. And whenever such conflict occurs, I just have one thumb rule: organization's interest comes first. For example, I stepped down as managing director about 6 years back. I never thought I would. But at that time, it so happened that the professional who was working under me, he wanted to have a larger role. And I discussed that with my board, and then we concluded that it's okay for me to step down, because otherwise we would lose him. So I stepped down 6 years back, and the results are there to see. He's done exceedingly well. The other thing was, being from a business family, it was expected that my son would follow me, because it's a very hierarchical society. So I had a difficult time convincing my family socially, but I think it's paid off because it was in the organization's interest I took that step. And one more example I can give you. We think that we have to reward loyalty, and of course, we have to be good with people. I have had instances when some very senior individuals did exceedingly well at a certain stage in their journey, but at some stage, they were not able to cope up with the challenge. So what do you do in such a situation? You reward loyalty. I'm very clear that the organization's interest should come first. So multiple times I've asked those senior people to go, but humanely. Don't ask them to go straight away. You give them a good package, because it is in the interest of the organization. So to sum up 3 things: create a right to win, invest in talent and culture, and number 3, have governance just beyond compliances in terms of what's good for the organization comes first.
I think there are many budding and existing entrepreneurs in the room, and Mr. Mariwala has given 3 distinct routes. For a change, don't think CapEx is only about technology. CapEx is about people. And he talked about culture and, of course, governance principles, which are very important. In fact, I remember a quote from his book that only when the values are lived every day and perpetually reinforced do they convert as a culture of the organization. Mr. Mariwala lived by that. Mr. Mariwala, tell me one thing. What is the one benchmark that India should meet in the coming years to win the game? You have already given some indication, but suppose you have to prioritize. What is that one thing that Indian company should follow rather, to see a double-digit growth, or as Mr. Goswami said, aspirationally, why not 10 trillion? Why not more than that? Why limit yourself? So why map has to be the territory? Why can't you go beyond the map?
I'm not an economist, but let me try and explain this. I personally think there is a biggest need the country has today is employment generation. If you don't create enough job opportunities, you may have a revolution in hands. Having said that, the employment generation can only come in if we have more and more entrepreneurs. That entrepreneurship can only drive if there is a very deep understanding of consumer needs. So I would say the most important thing entrepreneur need to do is to have that latent need of consumer, do insighting, find out what are the unsatisfied needs, invest in them. If they invest in them, and if there's a demand for that, it will lead to investment will lead to employment generation. To me, the starting point is the entrepreneur, and entrepreneur working very, very closely with the consumer. And many times the consumers, they don't know what they want. You have to go deep into consumers' mind to understand what they want, And there are so many needs which are unsatisfied today in India. At least in FMCG, there are so many sectors where the overall penetration of categories is very, very low compared to international standards. Even things like, infrastructure creation, it is ultimately a consumer need. People want to go from one city to another city in a much quicker way. So I think what the government is doing is that identifying those needs and then investing in infrastructure, which is again leading to better economic growth and things like that.
Thank you, sir. So what is your advice to corporate India? Are they in a position to ride the wave right now? Because, profit to GDP is at a four-year high. So what would be your advice to corporate India and others who are trying to ride the wave?
So I think this is a great time, and I've always felt it is always a great time, except the pandemic where it was unusual, crisis of a lifetime. It's a great time to invest. It's very important for corporates to have that optimism, but with feet on the ground. I've seen many entrepreneurs, they dream big. It's okay to dream big, but you have to have feet on the ground. It's like flying a kite. You can go very high, but your feet on the ground, So it's very important to have a combination of high aspirations, high growth, but ultimately it has to be backed by something which is very solid in terms of what you're offering. It has to be backed by very good quality talent, because there is a war for talent, and most industrialists, they don't realize the war for talent. The war for talent is as important as war in the marketplace, So you have to invest in talent. Again, at the cost of repetition, I'm saying this, but I think talent, culture creation is most underestimated amongst Indian businessmen. They have to attend to this very, very seriously. And just to repeat, I've covered a lot of these issues in my book about how to create talent, how do you create the right culture to retain. But to me, it is very, very important that Indian businessmen take this seriously. The past routes to success in terms of getting a license and all that is gone now in most sectors. So you have to be inherently strong to fight in the marketplace. And the second thing is now, I think we need to look beyond India. You have to look at a global scale. What are the global opportunities? We have enough opportunities to make waves globally. And I think Indian businessmen should look out and see whether can they expand globally and make a big impact through the global initiatives.
But tell me one thing, this is just a very adjacent question. You operate you are exporting to 25 countries. Operating from India, did you face any challenge in terms of multicultural codes that you have to interact when you are on the ground level in different markets?
Yes, you're right, absolutely. I think it's different culture in different countries. The geopolitics are very different. You have to have a very deep understanding. And Indian businessmen, we also underestimated the impact of going abroad. We went to Egypt, we acquired 2 companies, and then the Egyptian revolution came out, which was not expected. But each country, in terms of the corporate culture in each country is very, very different. We are in Vietnam, and there people don't speak out openly, So you have to understand the culture of the country you're going in, and ultimately, of course, you have to make them change to your own internal culture. But I think the cultural adjustments, the geopolitical developments are very different. And I think Indian businessmen are, I have seen it myself, that we suffered a little bit because we underestimated, we thought it's something like India. But it's very different. So you have to invest in those issues proactively and be prepared for some setbacks. We also had some setbacks both in Vietnam and Egypt, but now we learned the ropes. But the key thing is it's not like India. It is very different, and you need to have a different approach. You need to have a localization strategy. You can't manage everything through Indians in these countries. You need to have a strong team which is manned locally in those countries.
I have a final question for you. I notice that the industry in general, there are a variety of opinions. They don't share the same optimism that we feel as a network, or the government feels, or the RBI talking about GDP growth. Do you think when it comes to optimism as an option, we are either very irrationally exuberant, or we take an over-cautious approach? So we are into bipolar sentiments. What do you think of that?
Frankly, I think we should be internally focused. I'm very clear, Let others think what they want to think. As long as I'm optimistic about my business, I should be doing what I need to do. The government will go on. The role of the government is reducing day by day, and it will further reduce, which is a very good thing. The organization has to look internally far more than blaming the external environment. This is how I see the business.
Good, thank you very much, sir. Actually, I can summarize, because I was listening to Mr. Mariwala, that he had been continuously talking about talent, culture, consumer connect. I mean, as they say, culture can eat strategy into your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So same thing, your biggest capex is your talent. So I think they're all quintessentially true when you're running a corporation. And I think you can start again. So, and it's not even late. Of course, apart from your own company, you are doing it. The interesting part is that, did you feel hurt when you left it to the professional from a family-owned business? It's not easy, huh? Relinquishing is damn tough.
Yeah, it is tough, but I did it because it was good for the organization. I think that's, again, I followed it to the T, that decision, So it's not, I should not look at my interests. I have to look at the interests of the organization. Because the interests of the organization are relevant for all the stakeholders, just not for promoters. Whether it is employees, whether it is associates, whether it is customers, or whether it is the society. So you have to look at the interests of all the stakeholders, and that can only happen when you're looking at from that angle of what is good for the organization. It was tough for me. I'm not a kind of person who can just sit at home and do nothing. But luckily, I've been able to do a lot of new things, which I never imagined I would be able to do so. And I'm enjoying this reinventing myself post that. And it's worked out very well from all angles, My son has established a new business on his own. The professional who is managing it still continues, and he's created tremendous growth and wealth for the company. So it's a win-win for all.
Since I know you long, do I take the liberty of renaming you the monk who sold his Ferrari? So thank you very much.
Thank you.